I married a wonderful man, but his family turned out to be an absolute nightmare. His mother was always controlling and demanding, while his sister was jealous and toxic. They tried to ruin our relationship, manipulated him, insulted me, and even attempted to kick us out of our own home to move his sister in with her lazy husband and 6 kids. When I married into my husband's family, I didn't expect to find myself caught in a web of toxic dynamics that would start affecting my own life. You see, when Ryan was growing up, he was the golden child. His mother, Evelyn, was extremely close to him, almost unnaturally so. He once told me that, since his father was always busy working, he and his mother spent most of their time together. But what I hadn't noticed at first was how different her treatment of his sister, Lauren, was. While I'm sure Evelyn loves both her children, it was painfully obvious that Ryan was the favored one. And that must have been hard for Lauren growing up. Maybe that's why my husband always tried to be a good big brother, supportive, kind, always looking out for her. But the problem was that Lauren and Evelyn sometimes took things to such an absurd level that it crossed every boundary imaginable. For example, when Ryan and I first started dating, he was fresh out of college and still living with his parents and Lauren. His parents had given him an entire floor to himself so he could have privacy and invite whomever he wanted over. So naturally, he'd sometimes invite me to stay the night. But the problem? Lauren had absolutely no concept of personal space. She would barge into the room in the morning without knocking while we were still in bed. And yeah, you guessed it, sometimes we weren't exactly dressed. She acted like it was the most normal thing in the world, launching into completely random conversations with Ryan as if I wasn't even there. It was beyond uncomfortable. It wasn't just that she saw me in my underwear, it was the sheer lack of respect. And before anyone says, well, you knew he lived with his family, is it really that much to ask that someone knock before entering a bedroom? I didn't know Lauren that well back then, so I brushed it off as just her being weird. But after it happened multiple times, I told Ryan I wasn't coming over anymore, unless he put a damn lock on the door. He agreed. The next morning, when Lauren discovered the locked door, she lost her mind. She started pounding on it, rattling the handle, and yelling at Ryan for locking her out. When he finally opened the door, she stormed in, demanding to know why he had put a lock on the door. And then, the moment she saw me, she pointed straight at me and screamed, "Is it because of this war?" I was stunned, completely floored. The way she spat those words at me was beyond disrespectful. Ryan immediately told her that he had decided to install the lock himself, but she wasn't having it. She shouted that they were siblings and that there should be no secrets between them. Ryan, to his credit, stood his ground. He told her that he didn't have any secrets, but he put the lock there because she kept barging in while we were sleeping, and it was making both of us uncomfortable. Hearing that, Lauren whirled back to me, pointing a finger in my face, and accused me of coming between her and her brother. That was it for me. I hate conflict, so instead of arguing, I just excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom. Even from inside, I could hear her screaming. Ryan was trying to calm her down, but she kept going off about how I was ruining everything. Eventually, she left, and Ryan came to apologize to me. He promised he'd talk to her again and that she would apologize. And, to be fair, she did. The next weekend, she muttered a half-assed sorry, saying she just really needed to talk to Ryan, and that's why she thought it was okay to walk in. Ryan made it clear she wasn't to do that again, and she reluctantly nodded. But I knew she wasn't done. Lauren started finding new ways to dig at me. Once, she casually remarked, "You know, Ryan's ex was so much prettier than you." Another time, she started grilling me about my past relationships, smirking as she asked things like, "Why did your ex break up with you? Were you not good enough for him?" And she always did this when we were alone. At first, I ignored it. But then, one day, after another snide comment, I finally snapped. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You know, I actually liked my ex's family a lot more than this one. At least his relatives weren't controlling, intrusive, and obsessive." She looked shocked, like she wasn't expecting me to ever bite back. And, for the first time, she actually shut up. But if I thought that was bad, her mother was no better. Evelyn barely acknowledged my existence when I first started dating Ryan. But the moment she realized we were serious, she suddenly started acting like I was stealing her son from her. At family dinners, she would completely ignore me. At gatherings, she would talk around me, acting like I wasn't even in the room. It was as if, in her mind, if she didn't acknowledge me, I didn't exist. Ryan had noticed his mother's behavior toward me before and had tried talking to her, but nothing ever changed. One day, Evelyn even called me stuck up and spoiled, simply because my parents had sent me to a private school while she had spent her life teaching at a public one. I also found out that she had actively tried to talk Ryan out of marrying me, insisting he could do better. Luckily, Ryan didn't care about her opinion. He proposed anyway. When Evelyn and Lauren found out, they completely lost their minds. Both of them called me separately to say that this was a huge mistake, and since Ryan refused to listen to reason, I should be the one to break things off and give back the ring. I thought that was insane. I told them they had completely crossed the line, Ryan, and I loved each other, and I wasn't going anywhere. When they realized they wouldn't convince me, Evelyn reluctantly changed her tone. Through gritted teeth, she said that if I insisted on marrying Ryan, I had to strive to be the best wife for him, to take care of him just like she always had. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I tried not to take it personally. Lauren, on the other hand, didn't hold back at all. She outright called me a gold-digging whore and claimed Ryan deserved someone better. She even warned me that she would do everything in her power to expose me before the wedding to stop it from happening. That same night, I told Ryan everything. He was stunned, furious. But despite their constant attempts to undermine me, he told me not to listen to them and assured me he loved me, no matter what they thought. His support meant the world, but it still hurt to know that his family refused to accept me. We had already decided to pay for our wedding ourselves, so when Evelyn offered to cover half the costs, we politely declined. Ryan explained that we had worked hard to save for this day on our own. Instead of being happy for us, she got angry. She whined about how sad it was that Ryan didn't need her anymore. The only person who wasn't actively trying to sabotage our relationship was Ryan's dad. He was quiet and level-headed, never interfering with our business. But Evelyn, she wouldn't stop complaining. So, to keep the peace, we compromised and let her organize our rehearsal dinner. She agreed, and we were grateful. But as the wedding day got closer, things took a turn for the worse. The first incident happened when Lauren suddenly invited herself over for dinner. She told Ryan how much she missed him, and since we had already moved in together, we figured she genuinely wanted to spend time with her brother, so we agreed. Ryan even asked me if I was comfortable having dinner with her, and while I wasn't thrilled, I didn't want to be rude. She was about to become part of my family after all. The dinner started off fine until Lauren took a sudden, dramatic turn in the conversation. She started ranting about cheaters, calling them worthless pieces of shit. Ryan and I looked at her, confused, wondering where she was going with this. And then, suddenly, she locked eyes with me. So tell me, how does it feel to be a worthless piece of shit? My stomach dropped, my brows furrowed in confusion, and then she started screaming, accusing me of cheating on Ryan with my coworker Zach. Ryan immediately demanded to know what the hell she was talking about. That's when Lauren smirked, pulled out a stack of printed photos, and threw them onto the table like she had just played the ultimate trump card. Ryan and I stared at them. They were pictures of me and Zach at work, at lunch, just having normal, everyday conversations. I felt a mix of shock, confusion, and anger. Zach was just my coworker. We had started working at the company at the same time and had naturally helped each other out. We weren't even particularly close outside of work. He had a girlfriend. Ryan knew that, and I never hid anything from Ryan. My phone didn't even have a password. He could check anything he wanted at any time. Lauren had somehow taken these completely innocent moments and twisted them into some kind of damning evidence. Before I could even say a word, Ryan, clearly furious, turned to his sister and asked, "Why the hell are you stalking my fiancé?" Lauren instantly started backpedaling, stammering excuses about how she was just looking out for him. She claimed I wasn't on their level and was probably only with him for money. Ryan shut her down immediately. He told her she had zero proof and was stirring up pointless drama for no reason. Ryan tried reasoning with Lauren, telling her to stop spreading lies and sabotaging our relationship. But she just got louder, insisting that he open his eyes and see the obvious affair happening right under his nose. I tried explaining again that Zach and I were just colleagues, but she wouldn't listen. The accusations kept coming, her voice rising with every word, until I had had enough. So I looked her dead in the eye and said, "If you don't back off, I'm filing a police report against you for stalking and illegally taking photos of me without my consent." Her face froze in shock. "Wait, you're serious?" "Dead serious." I told her I had plenty of evidence to prove she had been following me, photographing me in secret, and trying to defame me with fabricated lies. Lauren's eyes darted to Ryan, then back to me. She panicked. She started begging, claiming that she only did it to protect her brother and that she didn't think it was such a big deal. Then she turned to Ryan, pleading with him to talk me out of it. She whined that if I filed charges, it would ruin her career and future. I didn't waver. The only person who can save you from the consequences of your actions is you. Lauren asked what I wanted. I told her that if she stayed away from me permanently, I wouldn't take legal action. At that point, she had no other choice. She glanced at Ryan for support, but he sided with me. He told her she should be grateful I was willing to drop it, considering how insanely inappropriate her behavior had been. She begrudgingly agreed, and from that day on, she never spoke to me again. Ryan still keeps in touch with her, but she doesn't dare address me. The night before the wedding, the second incident happened just one day before our wedding at our rehearsal dinner. Evelyn had insisted on organizing the entire event herself and had refused to accept any help. She told us she'd take care of everything, but when we arrived, it was a disaster. She had thrown together the most half-assed setup imaginable: cheap plastic tablecloths on picnic tables, cold takeout Mexican food, and an atmosphere so tense it felt like a funeral. And to make matters worse, she spent the entire night sulking, drinking too much, and complaining about how exhausted she was by all this wedding nonsense. This woman hadn't lifted a single finger to help with the actual wedding. She hadn't paid for anything. She hadn't been involved in the planning, and yet she was acting like she was the one suffering. At some point, my father-in-law had had enough. He pulled her aside and took her home. Lauren tried to defend her mother's behavior, but for once, her father wasn't having it. That should have been the end of it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these two would not let me have my day without some last-minute stunt. That night, for the first time ever, Ryan and I had an actual fight. I told him straight up. His mother and sister were no longer welcome at our wedding. He resisted. He tried to convince me that his dad would keep them under control, but I wasn't risking it. So I gave him a choice: either uninvite them, or there would be no wedding. Ryan was shocked, and I get I wasn't used to standing up to them, but I had reached my limit. I wasn't going to let these women ruin what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. And finally, he got it. Early the next morning, Ryan called his dad and told him Evelyn and Lauren were no longer invited. His dad, not surprised at all. In fact, he even promised to make sure they didn't try to crash the wedding. Not 5 minutes after that phone call, Evelyn and Lauren started blowing up Ryan's phone, begging, arguing, guilt-tripping, anything to get him to change his mind. But he didn't budge. He told them point blank, after everything they had done to me, he didn't feel comfortable having them there. That's when Evelyn lost it. She started screaming that I was a horrible woman who was tearing her son away from his family. Lauren also tried one last time to manipulate him, but it didn't work. Did I feel bad for his dad? Yes. He was the only decent one in that family, and I hated that he had to miss his own son's wedding. But whatever guilt I had completely disappeared when I later found out through Ryan's cousins that Evelyn and Lauren had planned to show up wearing white dresses. Apparently, there was a family WhatsApp group just for the women in Ryan's family. His cousins later told me that Lauren had actually encouraged other female relatives to wear white to the wedding. She straight up wrote, "There's no reason why only the bride should wear white." I was stunned. The sheer pettiness of it. The deliberate cruelty. At that moment, I knew we had made the right call by uninviting them. Ryan missed his family, sure, but he understood why I had done what I did. In the end, our wedding was amazing. No one tried to ruin it, and for the first time in years, I felt free from their constant attacks. Since that day, Evelyn and Lauren stopped speaking to me entirely, and honestly, good. I was perfectly fine with that. They still invited Ryan over for dinners or special events, which I didn't really mind. Meanwhile, His dad remained kind to me, and we actually stayed in touch over the years. The house? Ryan and I had worked hard, saving every penny for years. And finally, this year, we bought our first home. It was our dream house, and we were thrilled to finally have something of our own. Ryan's family came over for a housewarming visit, and, to avoid any unnecessary tension, I went to my parents' place that day instead. That should have been the end of it. But then, last month, Evelyn called me. It was the first time I had heard her voice since our wedding day. At first, she made small talk asking how I was, how life was going. I was shocked at her sudden interest, but answered politely. And then, she asked, "So, what's it like living in such a big house, just the two of you?" I froze. Ryan and I had been struggling with infertility for years. We had come to terms with the fact that we might never have kids. It had been hard, but Ryan always reassured me that we were enough for each other, that we didn't need children to be happy. And, of course, his family knew this. So when Evelyn made that little comment, I knew exactly what she was doing. Then, she dropped the real bombshell. Lauren was pregnant. Again. Her sixth child. Ryan had told me before that Lauren's husband was unemployed and refused to use protection, which was how they kept having all these surprise pregnancies. The man was the definition of lazy. He didn't work, didn't help around the house, didn't pay bills. Lauren was working multiple part-time jobs, while her husband sat at home playing video games all day. And despite everyone begging her to leave him, she never did. But Evelyn wasn't calling to just share the news. She had a request. She told me that since Lauren was unable to work during her pregnancy, she had come up with a solution. We should give up our house. Because, according to her, a childless couple like us didn't need so much space. She claimed that Lauren and her family deserved it more, since their house was too small for all the kids, and she suggested that they move in. I was speechless. It took me a moment to even process what she was saying. Finally, I asked, "You're joking, right?" But Evelyn was dead serious. She insisted that this was the right thing to do, and then she dropped another bombshell. Ryan already agreed to it. I knew that was a lie. Ryan and I never kept secrets. If he had agreed to something this huge, he would have told me immediately. So I told her firmly, "This house belongs to both of us. Ryan can't make that decision without me." Still trying to negotiate, I offered a compromise. Lauren and her family could stay for a few days if they were really struggling. But moving in permanently? Absolutely not. That's when Evelyn lost it. She started screaming, saying that a good daughter-in-law should be willing to make room for family. Then she tried to bribe me, claiming that if I agreed, she would finally forgive all our past conflicts. I laughed. Then I told her, of course, I'd be happy to hand over the house. Oh wait, we're still paying for it. And I know for a fact that if Lauren and her husband moved in, they wouldn't contribute a single cent. I decided to flip the situation on its head. "You know what, Evelyn? You're absolutely right," I said. "Since you think family should take care of each other, I completely agree that you should help pay for Lauren's housing. In fact, I'd be happy if you covered our mortgage while we take care of the other bills. After all, one job isn't enough to cover that. So when are you planning to pick up a second one?" The line went silent for a few seconds. Then, she exploded. She started screaming, furious that I would even suggest such a ridiculous thing. I calmly pointed out that it was just as ridiculous to expect us to take responsibility for Lauren's entire family. She kept shouting, growing angrier and angrier while I just smiled, feeling satisfied that she was realizing I wasn't going to give in. Eventually, she hung up on me. Not long after, Lauren called me, furious that I had dared to suggest her precious mother pay our mortgage. She shrieked that she had always known I was a gold-digging bitch. I laughed. "If anyone here is a gold digger, it's you, Lauren. You're the one trying to move into someone else's house for free." Then I dropped the real kicker. "And if you're looking for the real gold digger in this family, maybe take a good look at your unemployed, freeloading husband who does absolutely nothing for you or your kids." For the first time ever, she shut up. I made it crystal clear that she could whine all she wanted, but I would never let them move in unless they were willing to contribute. She accused me of being heartless, of caring more about money than family. I didn't care. For the first time, I stood my ground, and I felt no guilt about it. I took back control of my home. Update number 1. Thank you to everyone who supported me. The biggest question I keep getting is, Why did my mother-in-law think she could even demand something like this? Because she's always been entitled and controlling. And honestly, Ryan let this go on for way too long. We need to have a serious talk about it. It's sad that Evelyn would rather lie about her own son just to get what she wants. Lauren is just a pawn in all of this. She obeys her mother because she's always been desperate for Evelyn's approval. In this case, Lauren stood to benefit the most. She would get a free house, free childcare, and an escape from her useless husband doll while we picked up the tab. At this point, I was just waiting for Ryan to get back from his business trip so we could finally sit down and talk. This wasn't something I wanted to handle over the phone. Update number 2. It's been 3 days since my last update. When Ryan got home, we finally sat down to talk. I told him everything, how his mother called me, demanded that we hand over our house, and lied about him agreeing to it. Ryan looked shocked. The only thing Evelyn had told him before his trip? That Lauren was pregnant. That's it. He had no idea she was making insane demands behind his back. I told him, straight up, that I expected him to handle it. I wasn't dealing with his family anymore. He agreed. So, right there, he called Evelyn with me sitting next to him. He asked her, "Why did you lie to my wife and tell her I agreed to let Lauren move in?" Caught red-handed, Evelyn tried to backtrack. "I didn't really lie," she said. "I just knew you'd want to help your sister, so I took the initiative and talked to your wife about it." Ryan cut her off immediately. "Why would you assume that I'd be okay with my sister, her deadbeat husband, and their 6 kids moving into our house?" Evelyn's excuse? "You and Lauren are so close. Of course you'd want to help her." I closed my eyes, exhausted, but I didn't say anything. This was Ryan's battle now. Ryan, for the first time in his life, snapped. "Listen to me. I don't care how close we are, Lauren and her husband are not moving into our house. You had no right to go behind my back and try to pressure my wife into agreeing to this." That's when Evelyn lost it. She started screaming, saying that Lauren really needed someone right now. But Ryan didn't let up. "Then you take her in. You're her mother. If she needs a place to stay, that's your job, not ours." Evelyn tried another angle. She said that his father wouldn't allow it. Their house was too small. Then, she said the worst thing she could have possibly said to me. "Besides, your wife is childless anyway. She should be happy to help take care of the kids. It would give her a sense of purpose." Ryan's face twisted with rage. He yelled at her, "You do not get to talk about my wife like that. You do not get to force us to raise someone else's kids just because you don't want to deal with it. I'm done." Ryan didn't stop there. "You know what, Mom? Dad is completely right to want nothing to do with Lauren. She's turned into nothing but a baby factory. And honestly, I don't want anything to do with either of you anymore." Evelyn tried to argue, but Ryan was done. "I've tried for years to keep a relationship with you both, even after the way you treated my wife. But I'm done. I'm not tolerating it anymore." Evelyn begged him not to cut her off, but Ryan stood firm. "This is our home. She is my wife. And if you can't respect her, you don't respect me either. And you don't deserve a place in my life." And with that, he hung up. Since that day, Ryan hasn't spoken to either his mother or Lauren. His dad called to check in on him, and when he heard everything, he completely understood why Ryan had made such a drastic decision. In fact, he even apologized to me for his wife's behavior. I told him it wasn't his fault. Update number 3. The past 2 weeks have been interesting. A lot of people advised me to install security cameras around the house in case Evelyn and Lauren tried to pull something. So I did. I ordered cameras online and set them up all around our property. And wouldn't you know it? Last weekend, they actually showed up. They banged on my door when I was home alone. The moment I saw them on the cameras, I called Ryan immediately. He told me he was already on his way. I opened the door, and there they were, angry and demanding to be let in. I refused. Firmly. "If you have something to say, you can say it right here, outside." Evelyn immediately started screaming, calling me heartless, greedy, selfish. I stayed calm. "This is our home. You have no right to show up here uninvited." She kept ranting, completely oblivious to the fact that everything was being recorded. I calmly reminded her of our previous conversation that under no circumstances would Lauren and her entire family be moving in with us. That's when Lauren jumped in. You're ruining our family for no reason. You're just being stubborn. You've always been a gold-digging whore, and now you're trying to tear Ryan away from us. That was it. I smiled. You know, everything you're saying is being recorded right now, and I will be using this footage to file for a restraining order against both of you. Their faces turned pale. Evelyn screamed, "You wouldn't dare!" I just smirked. If you don't leave my property right now, you'll be receiving a legal notice very soon. Lauren tried to backpedal. Oh, come on, you're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. Right at that moment, Ryan pulled into the driveway. He walked up, looked them both in the eyes, and asked flatly, "What the hell are you doing here?" Evelyn tried to hug him. He stepped back. He repeated, firmly, "Why are you here?" Lauren tried to play the victim, saying I was controlling him and stopping him from seeing his family. I rolled my eyes. The delusion. Ryan shut that down immediately. Let me make one thing very clear. I chose to cut you both off. I made that decision. Not my wife. Not anyone else. Me. Evelyn started begging for forgiveness. Ryan didn't budge. Leave, now, or I'll call the police. Their eyes widened. They never expected Ryan to stand up to them like this. But he did. And he meant every word. They looked devastated, but Ryan didn't care anymore. They finally left, still fuming with anger. Aftermath. Since then, Ryan talked to his dad, who was just as shocked as we were, that Evelyn and Lauren had shown up uninvited. His dad assured us we did the right thing by not letting them in. And honestly, after seeing Ryan stand his ground and kick them out, I know they will never dare show up at our house again. And if they do, I'll be calling a lawyer immediately. I'm just relieved that Ryan finally sees them for who they really are. Hopefully, this is the end of their nonsense. Because all I want is to move forward and leave this mess behind. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe, leave a like, and have a great day.